Buenas noches, España. Buenas tardes, América Latina y el Caribe. ONG DESINFLÁMATE, en asociación con Sir Long COVID y Long COVID PR, presentan tu podcast semanal Aire y Vida. Aquí no contamos casos, los prevenimos con un equipo internacional de alto nivel. Y nuestro anfitrión, Jaime Acevedo. Juntos, haciendo educación científica sobre las 7 capas y educación para la salud sobre el Long COVID. En vivo y en directo y en español. Bienvenidas y bienvenidos.
Podcast 300 de Aire y Vida. Aquí no contamos casos, los prevenimos. Hoy, 23 de agosto de 2024, Viernes de Científicos. Hola, ¿cómo están ustedes? Bienvenida, bienvenido si te estás incorporando a nuestra comunidad. Soy el doctor Jaime Acevedo, médico, presidente de la ONG DESINFLÁMATE en Chile y miembro del Laboratorio Traslacional, un grupo de investigación asociado a la red española de investigación en COVID Persistente. Para mí es un honor y un agrado recibirles en Aire y Vida un viernes más. Hoy, Viernes de Científicos, podcast 300, con un invitado muy especial. Quisiera partir este programa especial, ¿no es cierto?, de Aire y Vida, mostrándoles este video.
Presents the constellation of long-term health effects of COVID-19. It is a multi-system disorder that can affect nearly every organ system. It affects the brain, it affects the heart, it affects the endocrine system, it affects the immune system, it affects the GI system. Long COVID affects at least 20 million Americans. It affects people across the lifespan. We have kids with long COVID. We have people who are 100 years old with long COVID. It affects people across the lifespan and across demographic groups. The burden of long COVID, the burden of disease and disability from long COVID, when you measure it, is on par with the burden of cancer and heart disease. And even if people emerge unscathed after having the first infection, they can still get long COVID after reinfection. And I don't think enough people really know this fact or know about this. Recovery rates of long COVID are also low. Between low rates of recovery from long COVID and the cases that are due to reinfection, we are supposed to see continued rise in the burden of long COVID until we find better ways to prevent it and treat it. Now, you should be asking me now, how do we prevent long COVID? Well, the best way to prevent long COVID is to prevent COVID in the first place. There is actually no long COVID without COVID. You know, if you go back to 2019, you go back to 2018, none of us have heard of long COVID. Have you? You haven't. It didn't exist. There is no long COVID without COVID. We need a sustainable, multi-pronged approach to prevent repeated infections that would be embraced by the public. This requires accelerating the development of oral intranasal vaccines that block infections. This is very, very, very important. Ventilation and air filtration systems are also very important. They can play a major role in reducing the risk of transmission of airborne pathogens. We also need variant-proof vaccines. What the virus is doing is really continuing to mutate on us. You know, every few months, you're going to see a new variant. We need a variant-proof vaccine that lasts for a long time, that is durable, that offers durable immunity. People are sick and tired of having to have boosters every few months. We need vaccines that last for 5 years or so they can get it done and get it over with for 5 years. We must also understand vaccine side effects. This must be acknowledged and understood very, very deeply. This is very, very important. Now, you should be asking me also, how do we treat long COVID? You've heard it before. There are zero approved medication for the treatment of long COVID. So these people have nothing to really lean on for curative treatment. Nothing, zero. Zero FDA-approved medications for the treatment of long COVID. This must change. We really need to change this. It's not beyond the might and the prowess of American medicine to solve this problem. It's absolutely not. We've solved much, much harder problems in the past. We just need to focus on this and solve it. We are the best nation on earth, and we can solve this. It's absolutely not beyond our prowess to address this. Now, people suffering from long COVID need treatment yesterday. The ongoing and planned trials for long COVID are too slow and too small to offer definitive treatments. We've developed vaccines at rapid speed, at warp speed. You know what we're doing for long COVID? We're doing trials for long COVID at snail speed. This is what we're doing. We urgently need trials, large-scale trials, to test a broad array of repurposed drugs and development of new drugs to treat long COVID. We must also identify and address the barriers that are preventing the pharmaceutical industry from entering the clinical trial, from doing trials on long COVID. You could be asking me now, is COVID unique in its ability to produce chronic illness and long COVID? The answer is people reported debilitating fatigue, cognitive decline, and Parkinson's disease after the Spanish flu, but we just swept it under the rug. The other viruses, including polio and Epstein-Barr virus, can also produce chronic disease. EBV can cause multiple sclerosis. Chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME/CFS, is also linked to a viral illness, a flu-like illness. It's a debilitating disease that affects 4.3 million people in the US. These patients have been marginalized and ignored for decades. So what do we learn from all of this? Well, we learn from all of this that acute infections, what I learned, the lesson number one from this whole pandemic, that acute infections can lead to chronic disease, that pandemics disable people. And this is not new. It happened after the Spanish flu, but we just ignored it. We just swept it under the rug. We call all of this broadly infection-associated chronic illnesses. This includes long COVID, and includes ME/CFS, and other basket of conditions that are, emanate from acute infections. And had we connected the dots between acute infections and chronic disease before the pandemic, we'd have been much, much better place to actually address the challenge of long COVID. We failed to connect those dots before the pandemic. Let's not do that same mistake again and be poised and ready to really, address the challenge of long COVID and also the next pandemic. So where do we go from here? The research effort of long COVID must match the urgency and the scale of the problem. This is my opinion, is really a must. And this is going to require a coordinated approach. And in my opinion, the US should consider the establishment within NIH of an institute to address infection-associated chronic illnesses. That includes long COVID and ME/CFS that have been ignored for a long time, and other infection-associated chronic illnesses. You have an historic opportunity to act. The lives of millions of people here and around the globe, now and in the future, depend on this. Thank you.
Bueno, tengo el honor de presentarles en Aire y Vida, podcast 300, al profesor doctor Ziyad Al-Ali.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be with you.
Welcome, Professor. We are happy sharing this live podcast with you. Please feel as a member of AIREVIDA. We will never forget this opportunity.
Well, again, thank you for having me. Really, really delighted to be with you and an honor to be with you all. So thank you very much for hosting me today.
That presentation before the Senate committee was very important for everybody in the world of long COVID and the 7 layers, las 7 capas. We will talk to you very soon about this. We are a research group called Translational Lab. So we are trying to make some advance in the model of care for long COVID patients. This is a conceptual research. So we belong to the Spanish network for the research on long COVID. And we will present you other members of our research group. Alexander Toro and Luis del Carpio. Luis del Carpio está desde México. Luis del Carpio is a Mexican physician. Alexander Toro is a Chilean neuropsychologist. So we are part of a group from 5 countries. And this is a small tribute for you because you have not only investigated about long COVID, but your work is crossing between the epidemiological, the clinical epidemiology to the social medicine. Very important for health workers and very important for patients too. So, thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alali.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Really, thank you very much.
Well, every Fridays, this is the live podcast AIREVIDA, and we have different guests as patients, leader patients from Spain, Latin America, and the Caribbean, from the patient associations, and also healthcare workers as the members of our translational lab, and also scientists as you, but we have invited before scientists from physics, engineering, for understanding the phenomena of the respiratory aerosols, and which are the better modes of prevention with the quality standards. So this chapter of AIREVIDA will have asked for some questions, and I will show you on stage some questions from our patient leaders from Spain, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So here you are, the first one. Thank you, Alexander.
So are you aware of the serious impact of that long COVID has on Latin America, and what do you think about that? So the way we think about long COVID is a global problem. Long COVID is not a US problem, is not a Latin America problem, is not a UK problem, it is not a European problem, or is not an Australian problem. We have long COVID literally in every country on earth. And I do a lot of these talks, and I talk to people in Europe, I talk to people in the Middle East, I talk to people in Australia, in New Zealand, in the US, in Canada. There are long COVID people all over the world. And as you know, long COVID can affect people across age. We have kids who have long COVID. We have older adults who have long COVID, and can affect people across the
different race and different ethnicity and different sex. Some people say, oh, this is really only a disease that affects women. That's not true. We have a lot of men with long COVID. We have a lot of women with long COVID. So it's really a disease that affects various demographic groups and various people around the world, and it's certainly impactful. We're now starting to see the economic indicators, sort of the impact of long COVID on the labor market. The people who are really severely impacted by long COVID, some of them cannot work, are disabled, they cannot work. Some of them have reduced their work hours. For example, instead of working 40 hours a week, they now work 20 hours a week or 10 hours a week only. And there are also studies that have been showing now reduced productivity. So even if you work the same hours, you could still work 40 hours a week, but then have less productivity because of impairments related to long COVID. So it's very, very clear that long COVID is a worldwide problem, is a global problem. We estimate there are about 400 million people around the world with long COVID. Again, so this is not a US problem. This is a global problem, including in Latin America for sure. And it has deep ramifications on our societies and also on our economic system. So the way that we think about it and we advocate it needs to be taken seriously by politicians and everyone else, because it's not a small problem, and it's not in one single country. So and we cannot keep burying our heads in the sand and ignoring it. We certainly must address this.
Yeah, I'm agree with you. So the next question. Thank you, Luis del Carpio from Mexico, a colleague, fellow of us in the translational lab.
So from Dardo, Vargas in Argentina, pharmacotherapy and neurobiochemical, biomechanical refunctionalization as strategic metabolic alliance for rehabilitation for long COVID patients. So there is a lot in this area that we are sort of trying to explore, and I think what is sort of really missing, and I think I'm glad that you guys are working on models of care. What's really missing is really empiric evidence that these modalities really work. So hypothetically, long COVID is not one thing, is a lot of different things, including some neurologic dysfunction, some other things that may be related to microbiome dysbiosis and other mechanisms, and it manifests in different areas. So various interventions may work for different people, and I think the money here, or sort of really the insights that are going to have to come from empiric evidence. It's going to have to come from trials. So there are anecdotal observations here and there that some things may work here or may work there, but at the end of the day, it is very, very important to pursue this with relentless empiricism, because that's really going to be important to be able to solve this problem. So I'm glad that people are creative. People are very creative and exploring different avenues as potential considerations to or therapeutic approaches or for the treatment and management of people with long COVID. But again, I want us to all move in the area where we are empirically testing these modalities to learn what works and what doesn't, so we can actually help people and get better and improve.
Thank you very much. Next question is from Francisco Vera, physician at Spain.
So with the use of Francisco, thank you very much for this question. Will the use of the combined antivirals be for the treatment? Will it be chronic, or should acute phase reinfection long COVID be treated with antivirals? So the way we think about it, there are two things here, or two main areas that that Francisco is actually asking about. Do we encourage people to be treated for COVID during the acute phase? And the answer is yes, if they are in a high risk group. And what do I mean by that? If they are over 50 years of age, who have comorbid conditions that predispose them to progression to severe COVID-19 illness, or they have long COVID, these in by themselves, we consider them to be risk factors for the progression of severe COVID-19. And as a result, we think that they qualify for antivirals. And that could be Paxlovid, could be molnupiravir or Lagevrio, or other antiviral like ensiltravir in Japan, et cetera, et cetera. Now, for people who have established long COVID, for the people who already have long COVID, does treatment with antiviral really work? And the jury on this, or the verdict on this, or the answer to this is not really clear yet. There's one trial, as you know, from Stanford University that was published in the journal American Medical Association, JAMA Internal Medicine, at the end of June, that showed that a treatment with Paxlovid for 15 days, 15 days, 2 weeks, 15 days, in people with established long COVID did not ameliorate symptoms of long COVID. Did not work in that trial. However, the devil in these things is in the details. In that trial, people who were started on Paxlovid had long COVID for at least 17 months. That's very close to 2 years of long COVID. And they treated people only, with Paxlovid only, not a cocktail, not a multiple antivirals, for only 2 weeks. Now, whether earlier treatment, of these patients could have yielded better outcomes, we don't know. Whether longer treatment, there's some virologists out there, because of the viral persistence, as you know, advocate for treatment for a month, at least a month. They say, I talk to all these scientists all the time, and they think that 2 weeks is not going to be enough to really totally eliminate the virus, that a more prolonged and sustained antiviral treatment for at least 4 weeks, or 1 month, 4 weeks, may actually be better. And then some people even advocate for a combination of antivirals, that using Paxlovid alone may not work, but maybe using Paxlovid and molnupiravir, or using Paxlovid, molnupiravir, and ensiltravir, or other, like they have different modes of action, may ameliorate or may result in better outcomes. So I think the answer to this question is still we don't really know yet, but trials are underway to explore and examine all those different ideas that I just outlined, and hopefully we'll learn something soon. And then it is my hope that a subset of patients will improve when using antivirals. So that's a hope, but we will see. We will definitely need empiric data.
Thank you very much, Professor. And greetings for Francisco. Isabel Deles. She is a patient leader of a patient association in País Vasco. Euskal Herria is the pronunciation for their language. Isabel has participated in this live podcast before.
Well, thank you, Isabel, for the question. And the question: how can low cortisol level be explained if long COVID patients are so prone to stress? Does the stress reactivate viral reservoir? So this is actually a very, very important question. So this is really wonderful. And thank you very much for asking us, because just to explain to the other audience members, usually we actually expect cortisol to be high in people who are stressed, right? So people who are have long COVID and maybe stressed or so prone to stress. Isabel is asking absolutely the right question. Like, why is it in a lot of them we are finding that have low cortisol? I think what we call that inappropriately low cortisol. So it's really lower than what it should be. It should be higher normally, but for some reason their body is not sort of coping up or compensating or producing enough cortisol. And then does this stress reactivate viral reservoirs? So this is also a very important question. So the stressors in general, like they impact the immune system. There is an intimate relationship between stress exposure and immune function and dysfunction. And when there is in situations of high stress, it is very plausible, although it has to be empirically verified in people with long COVID, it is plausible that high levels of stress may in some way induce immune dysfunction, thereby impairing the immune system ability to clean these viral reservoirs, to completely abrogate them, completely eliminate the viral reservoir, or could could in some way, lead to reactivation of other viruses. And as a matter of fact, you have your finger on the pulse again, Isabella, because you use the word reactivation of viral reservoirs. There is evidence that in some people with long COVID, again, not everybody, not 100% of people with long COVID, there's quite a bit of people with long COVID have evidence of reactivation of EBV or Epstein-Barr virus or other herpes viruses. So it's very, very clear that in these patients, there is some level of immune dysfunction that causes reactivation of viruses that have had 20 years ago. Some people had EBV 20 years ago. They have long COVID now, and all of a sudden they have reactivation of EBV. So again, our understanding of this is evolving by the day, but these are extremely important questions. I'm really delighted to have them. Thank you, Isabella.
Isabelle.
Oh, Isabelle, sorry. Thank you, Isabelle.
Isabelle. Vasco name. The next question is from Maribel Sureda. Also, she's a patient leader. Islas Baleares in Spain, at Spain.
Well, thank you, Maribel. So what needs to happen to stop denying? Will it persist until reliable biomarkers are found to provide a definitive diagnosis? Are we close? So first of all, what needs to happen to stop the denialism of long COVID? I think a lot, is first of all is more and better research. So we need to continue to do the research, and as in my introduction it was outlined, it's very, very important also to publicly communicate that research. If I do research and then keep it in my in my drawer and like really wonderful nice papers, and keep them in my drawer, and nobody really knows about them, and that's not going to do anyone any good, right? So we need to continue the public health communication campaign to really educate people about long COVID, and educate politicians about long COVID, educate public health officials about long COVID, educate our friends, our neighbors, our school teachers, our university teachers about long COVID. And that's very, 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 very important. And I think sort of the best antidote to anti-science or denialism is information and knowledge. That's really the best antidote. We have to produce information, we have to produce new knowledge, and you have to disseminate it. Now, will it persist until biomarkers are found? I think some level of denialism will likely always persist. There are some people still now that believe the Earth is flat. Even I don't know, several hundred years after discovering that the Earth is round, there are some people who think that the Earth is flat, right? So there is some level of anti-science or some level of denialism will likely always exist, but it should not bother you. It should not stop us, and we should keep moving forward. Advocating for long COVID, doing good science for long COVID, figuring out how to manage people with long COVID, patients with long COVID, and treating long COVID. And when it comes to the biomarkers, so it's like, are we close to finding a biomarkers? I think there's a lot that is happening now. There is really a lot that is happening to try to understand the biology of long COVID and figuring out sort of the molecular fingerprints of long COVID, so to speak, or try to get close to biomarkers. It is my hope that we will that we will get some a new findings in the next year or so. I mean, there is a lot that is happening, but again, sort of I'm hopeful. I'm always sort of like looking at the glass half full and with optimism. It is likely that in the next year or so, our understanding will be even better and more evolved, and we will have several candidate biomarkers that are close to being validated. But we shouldn't really wait until then to really recognize that long COVID is a problem. We already know that it's a problem. We already know that it's a real problem, a serious problem globally. We already know that it's really affecting economies worldwide. So don't let that skepticism and denialism of long COVID sort of temper you down or temper your we need to keep moving forward. It's a very important problem, and one of the antidotes of like not really giving too much weight to the anti-science and anti-vaccine and anti-long COVID movement. Those people will always exist. There are always people who are gonna say these things. We should keep our head high and keep moving forward. That's very, very important.
But in an individual level, how can a patient make his or her physician make a diagnosis and combines the system that the patient is a long COVID patient?
I think the best antidote is really to educate the providers. I mean, we definitely, the best antidote to lack of knowledge is knowledge, right? Like
Yeah.
that's really the best counterfactual. So we have to continue to produce the research. We have to continue to disseminate it, to educate medical providers, educate medical students, educate, nurses and medical practitioners, and educate doctors. And so we need to do a lot more than that. And I think that's really, really, really very, very important to make sure that we are really educating our healthcare providers. I think what we really find in the United States is that, despite our best effort over the past several years, still some people don't really know much about long COVID, don't know how to treat long COVID, don't know how to manage long COVID. And this is really pervasive throughout the world, right? And the best way to address that is to really to remember, I mean, long COVID is a new problem. It didn't exist, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, right? It's a new problem. So everybody is trying to understand, like, what is this new problem, and trying to wrap their head around it. And I think we need to make sure that we continue to have workshops and lectures and continuing medical education credits and conferences and meetings to educate healthcare providers about long COVID, to educate the community of people who are involved in healthcare about long COVID. That's going to be very, very, very important.
Great reason. So next question from Jose Mendez, a patient leader of the Association of Long COVID Patients at Madrid, Spain.
Hi, Jose. Thank you very much for the question. So what factors do people who develop long COVID have in common? Is there a suspicion of anyone? How advanced is the research in that direction? This is really brilliant, so because I mean, Jose is asking, like, a lot of people get COVID, but some get long COVID, and a lot of people don't get long COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people in the world have COVID once, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and they don't have long COVID. And some people get it from the very first time. They just get COVID, and then immediately afterward they have fatigue and brain fog, post-exertional malaise, POTS, all the or several other manifestations that may be related to long COVID. So what factors are common among people with long COVID? There could be genetic determinants. We still don't know. There was a paper that was in preprint about a year and a half ago, saying that FOXP4, one of the variants of a gene called FOXP4, predicts long COVID or associate with long COVID. So there could be genetic determinants of long COVID. Could be things related to, other immune system characteristics. Could be related to the viral load and how the immune system dealt with it. So I think we really still don't really understand very, very fully, why do some people get long COVID and some people don't get long COVID. Now, there are risk factors for long COVID. Clearly, people who are not vaccinated are at higher risk than people who are vaccinated. Vaccines don't eliminate the risk of long COVID, but they reduce the risk of long COVID. Antivirals also reduce the risk of long COVID. And then sort of, although everybody across the age spectrum can get long COVID, the prototypical type of long COVID is more common in people in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, but not in very, very old adults, not in very, very young individuals. Again, there are children with long COVID, there are old people with long COVID, but in general, there is sort of a demographic curve, for long COVID. But to your question, which is really very, very important, what factors do people with long COVID have in common? I think that's a question that we're still trying to understand, trying to really answer. And there may be genetic predisposition, at least in some people. That's not going to be in everyone, but in some people that may explain why some people develop long COVID and some people don't.
Yeah, but there is a very common, a very massive post-acute infection syndrome. Because the other post-acute infection syndrome not hit so often as the SARS-CoV-2.
True. And I think what's unique and very, very different about SARS-CoV-2 is the scale. I mean, we have literally we have literally around 8 billion people who got infected with SARS-CoV-2 in the past 4 or 5 years, right? Like most everybody on Earth got infected. There's scale, right? There is not much like, I mean, there is almost like no other virus that has this scale, right? So scale. And two, novelty. Like when SARS-CoV-2 hit, arguably, it's a novel disease or novel virus that had no immune system, no one's immune system on Earth had been previously exposed to. So there are two key differentiating factors between, post-acute infectious syndromes, let's say EBV and other things that have been around for centuries, right? So they're not totally novel. And also the scale, while EBV infects, obviously a lot of people, is still sort of the scale of infection with EBV is not all compressed in infecting 8 billion people in 4 or 5 years, right? But that's the scale of SARS-CoV-2. The COVID-19 pandemic hit, and most everybody on Earth had it at least once. Most of your friends, most of your family have had COVID-19 at least once. Most everybody in any country, Chile, Spain, and in Latin America, in North America, in the UK, in the EU, most everybody had it at least once, right? So about 8 billion people had SARS-CoV-2 in the span of 4 years. So these are two key distinguishing characteristics that make sort of the huge epidemic of long COVID, we estimate about 400 million people around the world that have long COVID. 400 million people. So that's definitely much bigger than any other post-acute infection syndrome.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Next question, and it's from Cesar Medina, patient leader of the Solidarity Community of Long COVID Patients, Mexico.
Well, thank you, Cesar, for this question. Can we, as patients, help in any other way as we have done till now? Can we, as patients, help to accelerate this process? I think you guys, the patient community in this COVID-19 and long COVID has done a lot. In Mexico, in Latin America, in Europe, in the US, in Canada. So you guys are the true heroes of the progress in long COVID so far. You Cesar, and the other patient representative and patient groups are the true heroes. That you've done a lot. You've done a lot to advocate for recognition of long COVID, awareness of long COVID, and resources for long COVID. And I think, obviously the fight is not over. We have to fight for more people to recognize long COVID, more healthcare professionals to understand what long COVID is and treat patients and stop denialism. There was a question earlier on about long COVID denialism. So we need to definitely continue to fight to make sure that people are informed and aware about long COVID. So what do patients, what can you guys do or can do more? You're doing an amazing job already. So I would say let's keep doing what we're doing now to continue to promote awareness of long COVID. We need our friends, our family members, our neighbors to understand what long COVID is. And to the extent possible, need to advocate with policymakers in the US, in Canada, in Latin America, to really to keep that on the agenda, because that's really important. We don't want them to forget about long COVID. We want them to keep it, front and center, that this is a problem. This is a big problem in Latin America. This is a big problem in Mexico. This is a big problem in Chile. This is a big problem in every country in Latin America and North America and Europe and elsewhere. It affects societies and affects economies, and we need to keep paying attention to it and help move the ball forward, help advance progress in this area to be able to help patients. And argue that this is, in America, we're going to do a lot to try to move this, but this is a global, we all can achieve better and faster progress if we work collaboratively together. And it needs to be a worldwide solution for this.
Yeah, there are some patient-led investigations. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So again, one of the really the highlights of this pandemic is that patients took it upon themselves to first describe the first cases of long COVID. The first, known cases of long COVID have been described by patients themselves. The first known written account of long COVID was by in the English media. There maybe in the Spanish media that I'm not aware of, but in the English media there was an account by Fiona Lowenstein in April of 2020 saying that we need to talk about what coronavirus recoveries look like. And then she told her story, and she has all these lingering health problems, et cetera, et cetera. Later on, the disease was called long COVID, also by a patient advocate. Patients themselves have done a lot of work to, do surveys of their membership to describe the symptomatology of long COVID, more than 200 symptoms. So people tell you that this is brain fog and fatigue. Yes, it's true. There is brain fog. True, there is fatigue, but there's a lot more. There is a lot more. There's 200 other things that can happen in people with long COVID, right? So that all came from patient-led groups, and they continue to lead the way in characterizing the illness and advocating for research and doing wonderful research. So again, if the heroes in the long COVID movement is not people like me, is really people like you guys, is people like Cesar and his team, and other teams in Mexico and Chile and elsewhere who are really who are promoting better awareness of long COVID, who are advocating for more recognition of long COVID and moving that ball forward. So you guys are the heroes for this.
Well, I forgot it, but the name of the music that we put before you entry to AIREVIDA studio was can't stop from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You arrived at United States some of the year 202 to 2020.
Yes.
Yeah, and that music was from since that year.
Thank you.
For you.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Last question from Deborah in Spanish. Deborah Leonhardt, patient leader and activist in Argentina. Please.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much from Argentina. So we are experiencing effectiveness with Q10 in reducing PEM. PEM is post-exertional malaise, which is as well as daily physical and cognitive fatigue. Are there studies on this? The answer is no, really rigorously done studies, but that actually parallels the experience here in the US. We hear a lot here in the US from several clinics, within the VA system where I practice and outside the VA system, that some patients, you're right, Deborah, there are some people are responding positively to Q10. But we don't have randomized controlled trials, but it's sort of there seems to be that maybe in some individuals it's actually ameliorate or improve post-exertional malaise and other symptomatology related to long COVID, or PEM and other symptomatology related to long COVID. It is very important though that we continue to evaluate these and test them empirically in trials to figure out exactly where they work. Do they work in all patients, only in PEM patients, or in PEM patients who have certain features or certain criteria? That's going to be very, very important to help us really optimize management approaches in people or patients with long COVID in the long COVID clinics.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ziyad Al-Ali. We are very happy because I have said that you are an good example for everybody in healthcare system, because not only you are a professor, are a researcher, but you are a fighter. You are a person who share not only the knowledge but also the energy about this. So everybody in the long COVID world and Spanish speaking people are very happy with your visit, and so we have some commentaries, and we will show them on stage. Martina Arevalo. Thanks, doctor, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Euskal Long Haulers. Welcome, Dr. Alali, and many thanks for your visit. Greetings from long COVID Euskal area. Martina Arevalo again. Welcome, doctor. Ruth Lobo. Thank you so much, doctor, for your hard work and support for all the long COVID patients. Another one, greetings from Madrid, Spain. Thank you. Martin again, Spanish-speaking patients are thrilled to have this opportunity with you. We are, she says, we're millions. We need an unified approach to address it. There were a lot of political errors during the first waves. Now just the word COVID makes them duck and cover and not face the issue. And what is to come if they do nothing? A greeting from me.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you, Isabel. Greeting from Mexico. Some later, but here we are as every Friday. The best antidote for the disinformation and the analysis is information and the knowledge. What a good word. Infinitely grateful on behalf of all the sick people of this small Basque country, Euskal Herria, a region in Spain. Thanks, doctor, from all the long COVID patients from Madrid, Spain. And the last one, thanks, Dr. Zalali. Gracias, Jaime. Saludo, Jose. How do you feel? What do you think about this?
Well, grateful. Thank you very much for hosting me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on your podcast and talk to the community, the Spanish-speaking community who are interested in long COVID, including patients and scientists and patient leaders and advocacy groups. So grateful. That's what I'm feeling. Gratitude. I'm grateful and thankful to you and your team and all those people who really jumped on the call and participated in this podcast. So enormously grateful to all of you. We are all one. We're all one team. Although we're in different countries, but we're all one team. We are interested, all of us, to try to improve understanding of long COVID, and most importantly, figure out how to really address the pain and the suffering of the people who are involved in long COVID, impacted people. There are patients who are severely suffering, some of them severely impacted. These people need treatment, and we need to keep fighting to make sure that their plight is recognized, and we're actually making progress on discovering treatment for long COVID. This is very, very important. I feel like all of us throughout the world are one team in this, fighting for improvement in long COVID care and treatment. And thank you again. Thank you very much, very, very, very much for hosting me today. Very, very grateful.
To you, Professor. Well, I told you I'm the president of NGO DESINFLÁMATE. DESINFLÁMATE is about inflammation as the common pathway for a lot of disease. And long COVID is a good example of accelerated inflammation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We belong to the LabTraslacional lab, and its association with to the Spanish network for research on long COVID. So I want to tell you that this network, this Spanish network, has a very good characteristic. We are next to the patients associations. So we are researchers, but also the patient associations are talking about what to research. And in our meetings, on January, we had the first one, at least I participate on it. We can listen to the patients participating next to the researchers. It's a good initiative. They have made the first clinical guideline about long COVID for Spanish-speaking people. We need to apply that guideline in our speaking Spanish countries. That's a process. It has been difficult. So, what have you done in the United States? Especially, what have you done as a scientist and a leader on the matter of long COVID and the prevention of the infection of SARS-CoV-2? It's very important because we are part of the same team too, and we feel it, but maybe sometimes we don't work together. So we want to tell everybody who is watching this live podcast, we have an opportunity. I have the opportunity of being next to Siyad Alali. You're watching it. And you too. You could make to him every question you want. And now we have to continue this process of divulgation, of education, medical education, clinical advocacy. Every steps you have done, you have to sustain, you have to keep on. True? Are you agree, Professor? Well, I want to show you some of the work of our translational lab very shortly. And this starts with the 7 layers, in Spanish, las 7 capas. Okay? I'll show you our prevention model. We made it with the support of scientists, chemistry, physics, engineering. It starts with education. Education about respiratory aerosols, near and far contagion, the nature of the aerosols and the drops. So the non-pharmaceutical measures need quality standards, 2 or 3 meters for the near contagion. No any mask, but N95 mask, FFP2, well fit. Not any ventilation, a continue ventilation measured with CO2. Not any filtration. EPA or MERV 13 filters, filtering and 6 or 12 air change per hour. And this measures, non-pharmaceutical measures, are needed for crossing from mitigation to prevention. That very shortly our model, where the green circles are putting on value the quality standards for passing from mitigation to prevention. And that's las 7 capas. Reorienting from mitigation to prevention. Airborne transmission is a new paradigm. Air quality is a new standard precaution, especially in healthcare. N95 is a PPE for respiratory pathogens. And the other is about long COVID. What we do about long COVID? A new model of care. It means the healthcare system, our model of healthcare contains the prevention, primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And so healthcare model of prevention with education, because prevention always includes education. Primary prevention of SARS-CoV-2 infection or reinfection. Secondary prevention of accelerated inflammation. We think of it's important to the diagnosis of accelerated inflammation. In this case, because of the SARS-CoV-2 infection. And tertiary prevention of a specific illness associated with long COVID and disability, even the rehab. So this is a few of our work in the translational lab. We want to show you, Professor.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. I mean, this is really wonderful. This is really great. I think most important in these care models, like the way we think about them, is they need to be tested empirically. So I think we're thinking deeply about these things here in the US, and I'm really delighted that you guys are also thinking about how to best optimize care for people impacted with long COVID. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And now for we are on the hour, but we want to show you the last gift to you. It's an honor. Gracias in Spanish.
Well, thank you for all of this.
Well, we want to you know our live podcast, AIREVIDA. This is the podcast 300. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, since 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And we every Friday we make a live podcast. Every
Mm-hmm.
Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It's a promise.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example,
Wonderful.
this is a Patients Friday.
Uh-huh.
Here you are, two patient leaders of association, in this case from Spain. But it could be from Spain, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Here you are, another example, Scientist Friday. And this is José Luis Jiménez. He works at the University of Colorado. and this scientist is a professor in the University of Chile. They took us, we learned with them about respiratory aerosols and the quality standard needed to prevent. And the example of healthcare workers, Friday. Here you are Francisco Mera y Dardo Vargas, two members of our translational lab. And so this is our mode for Spanish-speaking people of sharing the knowledge and putting in value the papers as those huge papers that you have released. So we are so grateful of you, your work. We know that's a lot of work, a big work, but we are listening to you. We are reading to you. And thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for all your effort on this, and really congratulations on the 300th episode for your podcast. This is really a huge, beautiful milestone. So congratulations.
Thank you, Professor. We want to invite you. I hope you have feel okay during this live podcast. I apologize for my bad English.
Oh, no, it's perfect. It's wonderful.
But with all the heart. And we want to invite you for other chapters of this live podcast, AIREVIDA. When you want, you can talk to the Spanish-speaking communities.
All right, absolutely. Happy to come back again. Absolutely. We're definitely. And again, thank you very much for all you're doing, and congratulations on the 300th episode of your podcast. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
See you soon. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all. Gracias a todos. Esto fue AIREVIDA, Podcast 300. Chao.
Bye.
Jaime, estás despedido. Pero nuestro equipo no. De hecho, ya estamos preparando el próximo podcast. Muchas gracias a todas y todos. Ahora que ya sabes más sobre aerosoles respiratorios y COVID persistente, puedes suscribirte a nuestro canal de YouTube, @AIREyVIDA 2021, activar la campanita y al fin seguirnos en tu red social favorita, Twitch, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok o Facebook. Aire y Vida es un proyecto desarrollado desde la sociedad civil y en colaboración con la academia, sin fines de lucro ni conflictos de interés. Una producción de ONG DESINFLÁMATE para la Medicina Social. 4ª temporada 2024.